It's time for another blistering report from the front lines of the cultural war for a constitutional America. And now, here's your host, Charles Benninghoff.
That was Republican Congressman Tom McClintock fleeing from his own town hall meeting in California when violent Obama globalist supporters were threatening his safety. So what is a globalist? What are they? Well, globalism started with Karl Marx and hardened under Vladimir Lenin, then took its ugliest turn under Joseph Stalin, a man who slaughtered and starved millions of his own countrymen in the old USSR, called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And this is back in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. Then in the 60s, John Lennon wrote his famous song, Imagine. And that song intones, imagine no countries, imagine no borders, imagine no religion, no nation to die for, and war being gone too. So today's globalists are true believers in the Erich Hofer sense, in that their belief in globalism transcends all of their other beliefs. For example, if a person were American, a Democrat and liberal, but he devolves into becoming a globalist, then the American border disappears, the American Constitution turns to dust, and any law or politician in the way of globalism quickly becomes a mortal enemy to the globalist movement. Globalists are the summation of Democrats, whom I believe are 95% globalists, progressives, anarchists, certainly Muslims as they believe in a one-world caliphate, and liberals who have thrown off their so-called shackles of nationalism. Accordingly, these people are no longer Americans, because the definition of an American is one who believes in the sanctity of the Constitution and that America's freedoms and self-determination are worth fighting for. With that background explanation, let's look at Congress. You know, membership in Congress certainly has its perks, and police protection is one of them, as you can see in the previous video of Congressman McClintock being escorted to safety by his policemen. That's certainly more that could be said for the victims who were attacked by globalists at the University of California, Berkeley. That campus a few days ago devolved into riots when conservative speaker Milo Yiannopoulos tried to deliver a pro-Trump freedom speech on campus. The police in Berkeley stood by. They stood by and watched as globalists and black masked club members of the public in the head with sticks. The cops stood on the sidelines. The thugs knocked people to the ground, surrounded them, and kicked them into unconsciousness. Men and women were pepper sprayed and beaten. A large number of people went to the hospital with concussions and other injuries. Thousands upon thousands of windows were broken, and the crew that broke them all bragged about how good a job they did. ATM machines were smashed, and fires were set all across the city. And this was all done because everyday Americans paid to go watch a young man deliver a speech about his love of America. That's Milo. He loves America. Therefore, the globalists hate him. The police in Berkeley stood back and watched as globalists ran amok and assaulted everyday American citizens. They tried to burn down the Berkeley campus. Cops did nothing. Anyone who still believes that bipartisanship or compromise with the left is possible needs to start wearing a safety helmet when they go outdoors. There's no compromise with globalist animals like the ones that were at Berkeley when they finally start showing their true colors. It's been a few years since America went through so-called protests like this, so people have forgotten. But this is how globalists behave when they're allowed to operate unchecked. We have to check them. That's what this message is all about today. There's no more ideological compromise possible. The divide between globalists and freedom-loving Americans has never been wider in the history of our nation. We are headed for a new civil war in this country unless people on the right start speaking out and acting out. We have to demand that Congress and people in the authority and law enforcement start cracking down on these globalists who are in fact violent terrorists. Today, I'll let you know how you can speak out to the House Freedom Caucus or the entire Republican caucus in Congress on this issue. I cannot state it any more plainly than this. Civil war is coming to America again unless we put these monsters in check. The globalists are trying to subject us all to a form of mental slavery. Just as patriots fought a war against Democrats in the 1860s to end human bondage, we will have to fight them again, probably before the year 2020. But this time, it will be fought to free Americans from the mental bondage that the globalists are already using to enslave us. If you don't think and you don't speak the way that they want you to, they will attack you. Half the country has now been brainwashed by the religion of globalism, and these people actually think they are morally superior to you if you believe America should be a sovereign country with its own borders. And they will use self-proclaimed moral superiority to justify violence against you and me. Here is how the globalist plan plays out. The terrorists in the street in Berkeley, Seattle, and other places are useful idiots for the globalists trying to run the world. And these folks all resident in the UN to begin with. Their job is to attack everyday Americans. The globalists want you to fight back, and eventually Americans will respond to these terrorists with extraordinary force. They just get tired of getting pushed around, kicked, and slugged. It won't take too many more incidents like the one in Berkeley before Americans start shooting these violent terrorists when their lives are in danger. That's what these globalists want, because then they will turn the police against you, or at least that part of the police force in the United States that are also globalists. Gun control, martial law, and total government power will be the result unless we speak out and stop it today. Congress needs to speak out against this too and take action against it. But instead, the GOP is now holding closed-door meetings and planning ways to protect themselves in the event of a civil war. They're not worrying about you and me, just ordinary Americans. They don't worry about protecting us. They're worrying about protecting themselves. Politico, an online news magazine, reports, and I quote, House Republicans during a closed-door meeting today discussed how to protect themselves and their staffs from protesters storming town halls and offices in opposition to repealing Obamacare. But Obamacare repeal is simply one issue. These useful idiots can riot over 100 issues. The GOP representatives are making sure they stay safe. Meanwhile, the globalists are wrecking the country. They plan to call their police protection in and run away if they are attacked by the globalists. But they are doing nothing to stem the tide of globalism that puts you at risk. Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress are praising the Berkeley terrorists and encouraging more terrorism against the American people, if you can believe it. Take a look. Listen seriously to this woman who is a member of Congress. You won't believe what she's saying.
We encourage our young people to get involved. I thought it was a beautiful sight. What also, as we encourage people to get involved, what direction and instructions and how can we have a more organized effort so that they can be a major tool in moving our agenda forward?
That was Democrat Congresswoman Val Demings. She was a former chief of police, and she's praising violent terrorists and asking how she can get even more terrorists to turn out to pepper spray and club conservatives in the head. It's sitting right in Congress looking at us. That's what happened in the 1860s when we had our first Civil War. They were trying to hold us as slaves, and the Republican Party was formed to free the slaves and give everyone freedom. The Democrat Party were the slave owners, and they're the ones that got their butts kicked at the Civil War. And that's what's going to happen again, unless we have Congress act conservatively and stop this nonsense on our campuses and stop it on our streets. You know, that Congresswoman should have been censured and kicked out of that committee meeting. She should have been stripped of any committee assignments for those remarks. Globalist police chiefs are part of this problem, and the do-nothing Republicans in Congress are the other part of the problem. This is not a fight we can afford to lose, folks. Here's what should have happened the day after the Berkeley riots, in my humble opinion. Congress should have put pressure on the president and the governor of California and brought the National Guard or the U.S. Marshals into town. The Berkeley chief of police should have been arrested under the Patriot Act and shoved in a hole in Guantanamo Bay forever for fomenting a terrorist attack on American soil. He forfeited his rights as an enemy combatant when he allowed that riot to go on. Then, a law and order sheriff like Sheriff Joe Arpaio should be installed with instructions to protect American citizens in Berkeley with just as much professionalism and enthusiasm as the members of Congress enjoy themselves. He should line up the police force and hold a press conference to announce that if another riot takes place, any officer who fails to protect the citizens will be charged with aiding and abetting terrorism. Firing these corrupt and globalist police chiefs and sheriffs, though, is simply not enough. They need to be prosecuted, and conservatives in Congress need to lead the charge in calling for arrests. They should be organizing martial arts camps for conservative youth across America. We'll call them freedom of speech camps. Congress should be censuring any representative or senator who praises and encourages these terrorists. Instead, some Republicans in Congress are prepping and stocking up survival gear and planning their exit strategies so they can get away from these mobs. But there's no compromising with globalists. We're going to lose our country if we don't start speaking out and acting out, folks. I hope you'll speak out on this issue to Congress today. If you go to our action page, you can send personalized letters to Congress encouraging concrete action against the globalists who are committing terrorist acts across our country. We need to see arrests, not just of the terrorists, but also of the police chiefs and sheriffs who are aiding and abetting the globalists. We need to have members of Congress who propone this sort of activity censured and thrown out. Freedom of speech is still the weapon that we have at our disposal, but for how long if we let these guys run amok? If we allow the globalists to continue attacking us in the streets, our speech rights may not last that much longer. Bob Mallory has instructions for you on the next screen describing how you can get to our action page, so stay tuned. Rush Limbaugh just said today, and I quote, "We need people with guts to take these people on. We do not need people that are going to cower and kowtow, because this is the last chance we're going to have." And I close Rush Limbaugh's quote with that. So this is Charles Benninghoff signing off and wishing you freedom, fulfillment, and God's many blessings. Also, stay safe out there. Get some martial arts training. Get ready to kick some butt.
Tell Congress to push back against the globalist agenda in America before it's too late. If you're on our action page on our website, use the form next to the video screen to select a program and contact the House Freedom Caucus. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, click the icon appearing now to find the link to our action page, or check the video's description to find the link. Speak out today.